Sprint car racing in Australia is entering a new era, and this guy is, well, now in a position to steer the sport. Jason McIver is the newly elected president of the Sprint Car Control Council of Australia. Fortunately, for the first time since taking on the new role, he has agreed to chat to me about a number of topics, including what he plans to change, what his new position requires, is it a paid position, modernising the sport, what the SCCA's role is in all of this, plans for a national series and the Australian Sprintcar Championship, and one thing that you all wanted to know more about was the traction control situation, and we talk about a whole bunch more. Just before we get into it though, I want to make sure you are all included in the 2024 Sprint Car Hub survey, which is now live. I want you to have your say, and the best part is that after the survey, which takes like not even 3 minutes to complete, you'll be given a discount code that you can use on your entire order over on sprintcarhub.com right now. But hurry, because the survey won't be open for too long and we've only got very limited quantities of merchandise still available. All right, on to the chat with Jason, starting with finding out who he is. Check it out. Jason McIver, congratulations on becoming the new president of the Sprint Car Control Council of Australia. I think a few people, or a lot of people would know you within the sport, but for those who don't, can you explain to us who you are, your involvement in the sport, and your other positions within the sport?
Yeah, and thank you, Toby. So I've been racing race Speedway for 20 seasons, and then also helped out Speedway after that. So I'm 36 years old. I started racing juniors when I was 10 years old. Did my full term there, went straight to till I was 16. Raced the likes of, Carl Dowling, Todd Waddell, those kind of characters, and graduated to sprint car racing, where actually was a 350 crate motor style class at the time in Darwin. Then it converted to the normal 360s that you see today. Did that for a few seasons, then graduated to 410s after that, and raced both for many years, and then did about 14 seasons in sprint cars before it all getting a little bit too hard. So I'm the public officer for Northline Speedway. That's on the executive role, but I'm a very active public officer there. I'm helped do the ins and outs of the speedway for the past 10 years, and we reintroduced with Jacqueline and Tegan Peck and Caleb Gotts the Chariots of Thunder series in 2016, then really got our teeth into it 2017 and made it into what it is today. So basically been a helpful committee member to Northline Speedway, or DSRDA, for a good more than a decade. And also part on the sprint car side of things, I'm the secretary for Northern Territory Sprint Car Association to help them get on with their administration and keep everything going. So yeah, that's about it. Public officer of Northline, secretary of Northern Territory Sprint Car Association, and now the president of Sprint Cars Australia.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Obviously, you've been around the sport for a long time. Can you tell us more about this new role, being the president of the SCCA? Why do you take it? And so far, what does the role actually require of you?
So far, the role requires me of answering a ton of emails at the moment. No, it is. I went to the conference. I think I've been going to the conference for nearly about 7 years now, to see what actually transpires year on year. And I decided to put my hand up because I was getting a little bit, not frustrated, but just a little bit over it, how it was kind of being run. Like Kathy, they were saying Kathy did a tremendous job. It's just straight up. She's done a tremendous job over a tenure at the SCCA. She took it on when there was a lot of fraudulent activity going on, and she had to go dig it out and turn it into what it is today. And I think they got to a limit where they were really comfortable with just doing their role, and they didn't. I just couldn't see the foresight into the future of it. I think because they came in such a bad time and fixed it, I think they had a trouble start exploring and reaching out again, and which is fine. And just with the other politics and stuff going on, and the state member clubs feeling that stuff should start getting rolling again. The same with myself. I thought, well, hell, I'll put my hand up and see what I can do. So it's just coming from just one little bit more progression than what's been going on, especially since COVID. I think we've all, Australia's really hasn't recovered since COVID, and you've seen America take off again. So why haven't we?
Yeah, fair enough. I think one thing that I want to know, there seems to be this maybe shroud of secrecy about the job and kind of what happens at the SCCA. Can you tell us, is it a paid position? How does that work with the people in the committee?
Yeah, so some the executive roles are paid, not huge, but they are paid. Like so for just sheer transparency, the presidential role is $8,000 for the year, which is probably very fair for the amount of hours you're going to have to put into it, and that's your role. So each executive does get paid. I won't disclose how each one gets paid because the other executive members probably aren't comfortable with me disclosing that, but I'm the president. I'll say, yeah, I get paid 8,000 for it. So when you work it out by hours wise, I'm probably going to get paid about $2 an hour. So, well, and it's defining what Sprint Car Control Council is. So really at the core of it, it's about, it's not so much a promoting body, it's more about controlling what sprint cars actually are and how they're administrated legally. And this is where I think people get the misconception of Speedway Australia as well. Speedway Australia is not a promoting body either. They do a fantastic job, but they're an insurance company. Well, they're insurance broker. So this is where everyone's getting, I think people start getting frustrated because they actually don't know, like, is someone really looking out for us or not? Because what's everyone's roles here? And I think our like Sprint Car, SCCA and Speedway Australia are kind of, well, we're not really a promoting body, but let's help anyway. So that's what I'm here to try and get that into a bit more of a gear.
Just to backtrack a little bit, does this new presidency role change anything with your role at Northline Speedway? Because obviously every year, I mean, if you're a sprint car fan in Australia, you would know about the Chariots of Thunder event and how big of a deal it is. We'd hate to see maybe that affected. Does your new role affect that at all?
No, not really. While this is all happening, we're in the middle of our season, so it's a little bit hectic, but so far it's been okay. No, I don't see it really affecting my role at Northline. The real benefit too is all the other clubs are in their off season while we're on our on season. So my season will just get wrapped up as you guys start getting busy. So it should be able to work hand in hand at the moment. I haven't come across anything I can't handle just yet, but same thing. I'm still in the very early stages of the handover from Kathy and Mark to really sink my teeth into it, because I'll have to be the appointed treasurer for now, which brings up, we're going to do some restructuring on the board. So the old way the executive were working, it was a very narrow to the top structure, which is fine because I think they needed it back then for when they did have some fraudulent activities going on, so they needed to control it. But now that is well and truly past us, I think it's time to open it back up and get a little bit more hands on deck with running an association.
What have you learned from your Northline Speedway and Chariots of Thunder role that you feel is going to give you good insight into how to go about this presidency role?
My long tenure at DSRDA, so I do know committee structure, how meetings are meant to be presented, how transparency works, delegating jobs, that type of thing. My Chariots role, like being a sport manager on that, is obviously knowing what race teams want and what the tracks want. So promoters struggle to make money, as we know. There's no promoter in Australia that's absolutely killing it, but they all want to do the best that they can. And obviously the prices of sprint car racing are astronomical at the moment. So I think I come from a background of knowing what tracks and promoters really need, but also knowing that it's really hard for drivers and teams to do it as well. That's where, from the chariot side of things as well, you have to promote and then also look after the facility of Northline Speedway as well.
So now, obviously, you're, I guess, embedded with the SCCA. Obviously, it's only been a week or two since you got given the role. Uh, what's your relationship like with the other committee members so far?
It's fine. Like I've known, they're saying I've been going to these AGMs for quite some time now. So we do
Mhm.
have developed a bit of rapport. Not going to lie, it was probably a little bit tense leading up to the election because Kathy is just such a staple within the association. But we
Mhm.
have had many, many phone calls after the AGM. We do plan, after the AGM, we got together and set a bit of an action plan of jobs coming out of the AGM because there were a lot of changes that we got told that we're going to have to go do.
Mhm.
But it's been fine. I know Matthew Cross for a few years now, and he does been doing really good stuff with the 7 Mate television stuff. And being Sawa, they run a whole different level over there in WA, as you know. So
Mhm.
he's used to the corporate side of things and high pressure. Mark Richards is a really good administrator of what he does. He keeps everything pretty well in check. And I've known Wayne Bates for many years as well, coming up and chief stewarding a few races. So, and also I've met Alan Bain a few times in WA through the Speed Weeks. So our relationship is, I think, it's pretty good so far.
Obviously, taking on this sort of a role, there's got to be something that you want to achieve. Do you have some sort of a business case or plan? Did you take that to the SCCA when getting voted in? And where do you want to take the SCCA? You must have some sort of a goal.
So I think my goal is to try and just update it. The just things that I noticed over the years is just what I was saying. It was very stagnant in the way they do things, and I'd really like to just bring, uh, how would I say, basically just up to 2024, how they approach problems and how they, because we're in charge of sanctioning Australian titles, and which we know it's kind of been a sticking point the last few years about, the classic is such a great event, and then there's always been the debate like what's the biggest race, the Australian Championship, and that I think
Yeah.
people have kind of felt a little, you know the Australian Championship's such a unique thing, and everyone's like, oh, it should probably be better. And so there's one thing I want to try and do is update the Australian title, update the way the administration works and how we actually tackle projects as well. So I just like the saying I do recognise there needs to be discrepancy and privacy in some things that the association has to do. Uh, but I think I just want to update the way they think about things. Is what I'm really trying to do. Yeah, and obviously the big one too is a national series. Since COVID, everything went kaput. I really want to start talking to stakeholders and working out what it's going to take. I know the guys that have been getting together for Speed Week. You probably would have seen some social media updates there. I was
Mhm.
privileged to go into a meeting with them last week, and I have another one this week. They're doing some really, really great stuff there, and I hope that it comes through. But I think there is an opportunity in Australia now to introduce a legitimate national series. What it looks like, don't know, but I think there's definitely some tracks that are absolutely killing it, and there's some tracks that we can help out.
You touched on it earlier about the SCCA's position in promoting sprint car racing in Australia. You just spoke about the Australian title, one of the major races in Australia, could be better. I think people can agree on that. You spoke about a national series, but getting back to talking about the SCCA not necessarily needing it being their role to promote the sport, mentioning those races and those events, a national series, that would be, I guess, promoting the sport through events. But what about everything else? If the SCCA isn't going to promote the sport, who does promote the sport?
And that's the fine line I kind of want to get into is the association's in charge of administrating the sport, but when you really look at it, administrating is kind of promoting. So it does fall on us to carry some form of direction and help the relationships between the state member clubs to work together. That's what it really
Mhm.
boils down to.
So if the SCCA, as far as promoting, I've noticed recently on, I think it's the SCCA's Facebook. I'm not sure if they've even got a Instagram or any other, modern social media um, handles. But does the SCCA see it that they need to invest in the media and communications and with the public website sort of things, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I personally think the SCCA's public relations need to improve from where it has been 100%, and that comes
Mm-hmm.
from also looking at, it stems from the the Australian title stuff. They sign over a contract and they go and help out the event, with officials and with the administration side of things. But I just noticed, I think everyone notices that it can be improved. They are missing out on some stuff like the free to air
Yeah.
TV stuff. The last title was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no reason to stop there right now. But in general, that's what I'm coming back to, updating it to 2024. That social media was also falls under that, as well as like the new online rego system that the previous committee have been working on is now coming to fruition, and it's been really good. And in the background, Darren Shattuck has also been trying to improve Sprint Car World immensely. As I've been able to see the back end of it, and it's a vast improvement from what it is now. And so, yes, social media definitely has to be improved from the SCCA side of things, 100%.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that's really what I feel like I've been able to build Sprint Car Hub on, is no one's putting this information out there, and now people are coming to Sprint Car Hub because they know where they can find information that they actually want. And I've even had meetings with Mark and Kathy and told them the same thing. Hey, if you guys did this, I wouldn't have to do it, So it's great to hear that you actually want to do something about it. I've seen already on the Facebook page, although that's a small step, it's a step in the right direction. As for what you would want to change for the Australian title, what do you have any idea? Like, surely it's not just change it for the sake of it, or I'm sure you've got some sort of concept. Is it the format, or in the lead up of, maybe promoting it, or where it runs or how it runs?
Honestly, it's general promotion. And look, the race format probably does have to need a bit of a look at, because it's traditionally ran pretty late, the race, because the format is a lot. There's a lot of heat racing that goes on. Don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
The races, we're a professional hobbyist sport. Guys are going there to race. They're there to get laps, but we have the professionals there that don't need to do 3 million laps to work out who's taking 20 grand home. The
Mhm.
and the same thing with the time factor. We need to get out of this habit of finishing after 10 o'clock. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Especially if we're going to introduce and keep going with this public television as well. We need to sharpen the show up to make it more
Yeah.
reliable. Get a more sustainable TV package for it, so it's trusted, and then it's
Mhm.
just a building block from there. So I'm not necessarily the first 6 months. I'm not here to change the world on its head, because we've just had our AGM, so that's our agenda for the year. But in the background, it's definitely things to work on for next year in the background of it all. Right now, I just want to get everything signed over and sink my teeth into it and actually see what administrative workload this really is.
Yeah, it's going to be a big change for you, something that you're going to have to learn. And then hopefully, I guess in time, like you said, there's a bit of a process to then hopefully eventually be able to sink your teeth in and actually maybe uh, implement some changes. As for the state member clubs, or SMCs, that people would see in press releases as it's written, what do you plan on? The thing is with the SCCA, that's one thing, but you also need to. There's all these state member clubs all around the country that you would have to then maybe try and push for change as well, to modernize them as well. Would you say?
Yeah, 100%. And that was something that was really positive in the last AGM before we quitted the meeting, is that the ideas put forward, all of them were on board. There's no objective going on when we left that AGM. There was no unhappy states of where we're trying to go, which is a really positive thing.
Let's get into some of the motions from the AGM. I know within the last couple of years there was the implementation of the Tezuda concussion device, if that's what you want to call it. Not every driver was happy about it. It was, I think personally, I think the way it was brought in was questionable. But what are your thoughts on that? And obviously, recently at the AGM, there was the announcement that I think a concussion register will be introduced. Correct me if I'm wrong. Can you tell us more about your thoughts on that and where you see that whole segment of the sport going?
Yeah, so the impact indicators have look they've had lots of mixed reviews. They have been effective in actually picking up legitimate concussions when they might have been skipped for real.
Sure.
So at the end of the day, we've got to be seen proactive against concussion. Every sporting organisation is really trying to nail down concussion. You can especially see it in football. Now, the devices themselves have been, pretty mixed bag of being received. The discussions we did have at the AGM is we can start, because that was quite a few, about 3 years ago now. There were a discussion to try if we can find alternative devices. Let's go and explore it. So it's one of the things on our agendas in the background to start investigating that further. I know they've got the USAC ones that they use as well, which is some stuff we're going to be looking at. So in a nutshell, the impact indicators are here to stay, but we are definitely looking at alternatives as well. The concussion register is something that's going to become a part of the online rego and licensing system. Something that the boys at Tom Dixon and Jacob Dixon have been working really hard on to improving for the state member club. So the administration side there is getting a big upgrade on the user interface. So clubs can administrate their licenses and logbooks a lot easier. Now, part of that will also be integrated into a concussion register. So when they do go off, basically a driver doesn't get missed in the system. So if we have a really, really bad driver that's getting knocked out every week, if as he gets more concussions, he needs to be looked over more and more thoroughly, is what's going on. So that's a good register in a way to make sure that drivers just don't keep going racing when there could be some serious internal issues wrong with them.
I don't want to speak for you, but I'm pretty sure that you questioned the Tezuda device when that was implemented. Do you see maybe another device being introduced or anything like that?
Yes, I personally think we could see another device introduced. I was saying that the Tezuda devices were implemented at the time because that was the device that made the most sense at the time. But in saying that was 3 years ago. So at the AGM, we talked about starting that process again and just basically investigating again for devices that could be an alternate. Because we're not gonna go away from not registering concussions. That would be a backward step in our eyes. Yeah.
All right, so let's just quickly try and smash through some of the motions from the AGM. The changes to the Constitution, I know that maybe you wanted to separate the Vice President and Treasurer roles from any other roles, is that right?
Yeah, so the executive officer, which is Matthew Cross at the moment. So Matthew does take on a fair bit of workload. So to essentially promote the role, we're going to get rid of the executive officer role and make it a vice presidency role. And then in the Constitution, at the moment, it stands that the Treasury role is appointed to someone already on the executive. Now, I want to, which we have voted on to separate that. That's going to take another special general meeting to do. So we've drafted up the constitutional changes, and we're going to hold a special general meeting when we're ready, because we've got a bunch of 360 LS sprint car motor changes to happen. So that's how many, we had a lot going on that last AGM. We're going to have to hold another special general meeting to really nail it down, so we don't have to wait all the way till next May to start the process again. But yeah, adding to another person on the executive, especially a treasury role, is gonna be key. The SCCA was really lucky to have Kathy as an experienced accountant for those years. But in saying that, I think it might have been a problem in the past of people not wanting to put their hand up, knowing they're going to have to be the treasurer and the president at the same time. So I think more hands to light work.
Fair enough. I want to ask you about the pro sprint category now. That the name of that category is now going to be 360 LS sprint cars. Could you come up with a worse name, or was there any other names? Were there any other options?
No, but the other options was just going back to 360 sprint cars. The state member clubs voted, and that's what they like. So it's a really to the point name. It's exactly what they are.
No, that's a good point. What about Borderline Speedway in Mount Gambier, South Australia? That track will host the Australian Sprintcar Championship a year after there is an Australian Sprintcar Championship in the same state. I know some people were questioning why South Australia got two in a row. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So unfortunately, it was the same issue that we had with COVID, and Brisbane ended up getting that Australian title a few years ago. Sydney Speedway, as you know, you well documented the problems that's happened in the past. The promoters at Sydney Speedway had to forfeit that Australian title. So we thought, as state member clubs, that we should open it up to Australia wide and do a similar process we did with COVID. Murray Bridge won that tender in that meeting, the president's meeting. So that was, that was awarded to them. But we also acknowledged that the rotation shouldn't be affected by the process, because what was going to happen leading into that meeting, we all agreed that the rotation wouldn't change because the tracks putting forward literally just had Australian titles as well. So we had Queensland and WA tracks apply for it as well. So if it went either way, you would still be having the same argument. So we just eliminated, okay, we're going to take the rotation out of it and the best tender wins. And this year it was Murray Bridge that won it, and the rotation went back to South Australia, and Borderline Speedway won it.
Traction control. From the outside, it seems like a mess of a situation, and it seems like maybe not much has happened. But being on the inside, what's the situation with all that?
So Matthew Cross and Alan Bain have done some really good work the last season and a bit. So for the sake of not ruining their research, so to speak, because it is sensitive information, we don't want to tell the bad guys where we're up to, so to speak. But the report that Alan and Matthew gave at the last AGM was pretty compelling stuff. So we do have it. We worked out what it does, and now we're up to how can we try to start to develop a tool that can detect it easily. So that's where I'll leave it with that, because I don't want to give any more information, because it is sensitive stuff. We want to be ahead of the bad guys. And traction control is something that I think we can universally say is something that we don't want. Sprint cars are already so expensive. Why do we wouldn't want to go and legalize another $8,000 to $30,000 part to someone to bolt on there? It's not what we're all about. And as you know, I think you and I both know that's not the ethics of Speedway in itself. You know, we're all we don't want it. It's not we already got enough trouble on our hands.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that's your outlook on it, because really no one, I think, really wants it. Like I said, it's an added cost for no real reason. But it is annoying thinking that people may be running it and getting away with it. For me, it certainly takes the fun out of the sport. And I'm not sure how anyone could actually feel good using something like that. Lastly, just from the motions of the AGM, the TV coverage, huge numbers of 3 million plus and 5 million plus minutes viewed on 7 Plus. Obviously, thankfully, we have something like Clay-Per-View, our own streaming service that can stream just about every other event. What's your view on streaming and TV coverage, and especially for the events that the SCCA runs or promotes, if you will? What do you see happening there as far as coverage?
So our stance from the last AGM that moving forward, we will still pursue free-to-air television for the Australian title. So that's what we're talking about for Borderline Speedway as well. So I think free-to-air TV is great, but I also have to acknowledge that some tracks do rely on live streaming money to pay the drivers and to keep the gates open. It's a real tough one in the industry. It's no easy answer. So the answer is whatever is best for the sport, while also looking out for the track promoter and the driver. It's a real half-ass answer, I know, but it's not an easy question to answer. We're in this very sensitive area now. Like we see, Perth Motorplex with Speedway absolutely kills it, and they do their own 7 7 Plus free to air when they can.
Yeah.
And we've gone on our end because we're entitled to the contracts, as in the Speedway Australian Sprintcar title contract, saying we have the rights for the live streaming or production of it. So we're exercising our right to do the TV on SCCA side because we can see the benefits of it. While we are in a decent financial position, it's a case of let's have a crack at the moment. But I do acknowledge the other tracks that are behind the paywall. I know how hard it is to run a track myself, so it's a tough one. They're doing everything they can. So yeah, it's one it takes time to navigate to see what's going to happen.
With the success of what's happening in Perth with 7 Plus, and obviously the coverage by Dean Neal and his team with 7 Plus at the Australian Sprintcar Championship at Warrnambool in January, do you see the opportunity in front of our sport with possibly flipping the script and having the sport earn money just like any other major sport does, like a football or cricket or supercars, if you will, where they earn money off their coverage rather than us paying for our product to be on TV? Are you not excited by that? And the thing is I think whoever runs, say, a national series is going to be able to take advantage of earning that money. Is that something that the SCCA would not want to be part of?
That's the end goal, really, isn't it? So the free to air stuff, we're hoping that these results that 7 Plus are seeing at the moment, that they start to, because the SCCA pay for all the production and everything to make it happen. I don't know how the motorplex work. That's well within their right to how they run it, but they do it fairly often. So that, I think that the more we can prove ourselves that our product is something worthwhile, I definitely would think that the production cost is going to go down. And then if we develop this relationship further and prove ourselves, I can't see why not the tables turn and we actually start getting money to show it. And that is one of the main end goals that the executives share with putting the Australian title on free to air.
And lastly, I know I said lastly before, and this will be the last question. There's exciting news about what's happening in Adelaide for the Adelaide 500 in November. Sprint cars are going to run there, a makeshift track. If people who are watching this haven't heard about it, check out our older Sprint Car Hub videos. But is the SCCA involved with that at all? And if not, what sort of position do you expect to play in that?
So we just have to respect our boundaries a little bit there. So it is a South Australian sanctioned event. So they're saying the SCCA is the contracts for the Australian Sprint Car title. We're not obliged or want to butt into what our state member clubs are already doing. But if they call for help, we'll 100% help them with that. So so that's the gist of it. That's a South Australian state member club sanctioned event. I'm sure they'll do a great job. And same thing, we're on the phone to President Adam Curry every week, just discussing what's going on. And if they ever need a hand, we're there.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time, Jason. I really appreciate that you've are happy to have this open line of communication. Hopefully it's something that we can have moving forward and people can hear from you and get an idea of what's going on. I think you've probably cleared up a lot of things for a lot of people who would have watched this. So, yeah, thanks for your time.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Toby. Appreciate it. It's going to be a tough job, but let's have a crack. Let's do it.